Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Thank you so much for listening. Please click on that subscribe button. Sorry I've been off a while. It's been 13 days since the Detroit Pistons announced that they were going to be searching for a new head of basketball operations or president of basketball operations, whichever you prefer. And we haven't heard a word. Just like our Pistons always do, they keep things quiet, just like with injuries or whatever. So there's not been a word 13 days. And so, I can't wait till we hear some news. We haven't even heard any leaks about who they're interviewing. We've heard some speculation by some writers, but we've never heard anybody say who they were going to hire or who they were interviewing. And so I know they hired, like most corporations, they hire a search committee, a company that will seek out and find candidates for them. And so anyway, I think that it was brilliant by Tom Gores to do this, to get the president or head of basketball operations. And so that puts him off the hook. And again, it was brilliant. So he can just say, I hired this person. I gave them full control. They got to hire and fire whoever they want. So he's not going to be the bad guy for firing Troy or Monty. And he also is not going to have to say and look like he was they didn't have to save face by letting his ego say, because he signed Monty to that big contract. And so I think this kind of lets him off the hook. I think it was smart of him and will be interesting to see what happens. I do think that they definitely should let both Monty and Troy go and head in a new direction. It's going to be imperative that we get somebody that's very bright to lead the organization and to make these next hires. And I think, there's some candidates, there's a lot of talk, in Piston chatter and Piston Nation about some unrealistic things. And I mean, I just, I'm not laughing at people, but I just think people sometimes think that it's, like Paul George is going to sign with the Pistons. Paul George is not going to sign with the Pistons. We could offer him the Supermax, whatever you could possible. He will not sign with the Pistons. He will sign with the Clippers, or he will sign with the 76ers. Those probably are the only two choices that he may ever sign with. Bob Meyer, who was the general manager of the Golden State Warriors when they won their championships, and people suggest that he would go on with the Pistons. He's not going to sign with the Pistons. He likes to live in Southern California, and so he's not going to move to Detroit and uproot his family. He has a family with small kids and stuff, and he was smart, though. He could see the writing on the wall. He knew that organization was going downhill. So he is a smart guy. He jumped ship at the right time, and nobody's perfect. He did a lot of the stuff. He wasn't even the general manager when they drafted Steph, but he did make a lot of the moves that made them a dynasty. But he's going to be gone now, and he made some decisions at the end. Who knows whether they right decisions or not right decisions? But they certainly tailed off, and they didn't. They got beat out in the play-in game. So there's a lot of disappointing teams. We're going to talk about that. We're so disappointed, and of course we would rather be almost any team because we had the worst record. But there's a lot of places where fan bases are really disappointed. We're going to get into that some, but people talk about Tayshaun and having him be the guy, the president of operations, but everybody thinks this, and oh yeah, he knows the culture, he knows the thing, but these guys have proven not to be the great guys. Michael Jordan was horrendous, the greatest player of all time, arguably, along with LeBron, those two, and he was a complete failure with the Hornets. So yeah, and then there's other guys. Isaiah tried to be general manager and coach, and he didn't do so great. Magic, who was a basketball savant, and he was not great when it came to being a manager. So there's more things to it. So congratulations to Mark Dagnall. That's the coach of the year. He's 39 years old, coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were terrible, until the last 2 years, and he has been magnificent. But that just shows you he was not anybody that was anybody. He was not this famous player or he didn't have to come from this coaching tree. He just worked his way up. He was very young. So I think that is the formula. There's a lot of young coaches in the NBA and in the NFL that have been real successful, that were assistants. They started out in the film room. A lot of these guys started out in the film room. And so that's, maybe what we're going to look for. There's a lot of smart people that just don't have big names and stuff. So Tayshaun, he's another one that's, I wouldn't, like Tayshaun. I love my Piston players, but to think, some people suggest to my fans or listeners that we hire Lambier, and I love Lambier's toughness and his grit, but there's a reason nobody in the NBA have signed him. So another guy everybody's talking about, the hot name is Bryson Graham. He's an assistant GM for the Pelicans, and I don't want him. He has ties with Monty. So if he gets the job, Monty's going to be sticking around. So he's a young guy though, and he's kind of like one of the kind of guys I was just talking about. But I still don't think he would ever be hired as the head of basketball operations. I think he would be possibly hired as a general manager. And again, I hope he isn't, just because he probably would keep Monty around. So yeah, it's going to be interesting and fascinating. A name I like, Shane Battier. So he's a smart player. Doesn't mean he'd be a smart GM, but I'd be interested. Neil O'Shea, that was in Portland. He's been a name that's been thrown out there, but he got fired because they did they researched it, and he created a toxic environment for the Blazers, and that's why he got fired. So we don't want a guy that even has that in his resume. So we know the guy John Horst is the guy that's been really mentioned, and I still think he would be a great candidate, because a lot of people out, like even superintendents at schools. I was a teacher for 41 years and coach, and after a certain amount of time, they wear out their welcome, and things are just like with Bob Meyer in Golden State. Things are not looking good for the Bucks, and so it might be time for him to restart. And again, he is from Sandusky, Michigan. He got his a degree in sports management from Rochester College in Michigan. His mom's a professor at Western, and so he's still quite young, and I think he would be a good general manager for us, and if that's the guy that they pick. But there probably is somebody out there that nobody's thought of, or we haven't even heard of. So it will be very interesting to see what happens. But I'm confident and hopeful that the new president of basketball operations will get a new general manager and a new head coach. I know a lot of you feel the same way. So we just know that Monty, I have confidence. I have confidence that we could win close to 30 games next year. And just with the guys that we have coming back, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but not with Monty. He has just proven to be a poor judge of talent, put the wrong players out there. Anybody that thought that Killian Hayes was better than Jaden Ivey, or even played Killian Hayes and started him for as long as he did, he seems to be even very slow to make adjustments. Even some of the adjustments he made were under pressure from the owner or from the organization. And then, he would just, the inconsistency where he would go to a press conference and say one thing, and then the next day do the opposite. And all these things have been talked about. I've talked about them. A lot of podcasters have talked about him. The writers have talked about it. That how hypocritical he was of what he would say and then what he would do. They never matched. And so somebody that is that inconsistent in their thoughts and their actions and their words doesn't seem like the kind of guy that players can trust and believe in if they hear what he says. So anyway, I just think that, I think that now, having hired this new person, it will give Gores a way out of, eating that money. And again, 30 million or 80 million is not huge. We've ate a lot of money for players' contracts, and we just, for 1 year, we just paid Blake Griffin over 30 million. And so we're going to talk about him a little bit later too. So it is going to be interesting. I think that they need to start moving. I think that it would be great to have somebody in place May 12th. May 12th is D-Day. It's when they do the lottery and they find out the draft order. They roll those ping pong balls, and it's disappointing. I will say this: I was real excited about Zachary Ricochet, and thought he potentially was the guy, and he still might be the guy. It's just this draft is not good, and I say that, and there's going to be some good players come out of this. I'm sure that in the lottery, there's going to be some players, but it is not clear cut. I can go through my draft history and who I wanted, and I will do that at some point. And I've been correct on a lot of guys, and I don't have the information that the GMs have to evaluate players, and I don't have access to all the film and everything that they have. I just listen to reports from a wide variety of people, and then I can consolidate those reports and determine who it is that I want. And I was confident that Ricochet was the guy. I like Cody Williams. Cody Williams went down the toilet. He's I watched him play every game I could on TV, and he was injured part of the games, or he had a couple teammates that are borderline NBA prospects that never passed him the ball, but he did not seem aggressive. He shot really good percentage, but he shot like 2 threes a game. And so he didn't seem aggressive. I love his brother. And so that was part of the reason why I thought that, but his draft stock has really dropped. Ricochet's has dropped. I still think, again, he could be a guy, but these guys aren't nothing like the guys that have been in the past year. So this is we've had bad luck. We've had bad luck in the lottery. We could have gotten Chet or somebody, we could have got Jabari Smith or Banchero or some of those guys we could have gotten, and we just had bad luck. We could have gotten Brandon Miller. He would be perfect for this team. There's no Brandon Millers that I can see in this draft. I wanted Brandon Miller. I for some reason I just thought we weren't going to get Wemby, and so I thought we were going to have to choose between Scoot and Brandon Miller. And if you can go back and watch my podcast from last spring, you'll see that I was strongly behind Brandon Miller, and he proved out to be even better than I thought he was going to be. And Jabari Smith, we just need a guy like that can shoot the three, and there's just nobody that can shoot the three like that. I know that Dalton Connect is a lights out shooter, and Reed Shepard, though he's 6'3", and I don't know if he can hold up guarding NBA players. So there's just a couple guys that can shoot, but it's just we needed to get a 6'9" guy that can shoot and and defend. We need guys that can defend, and so yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but after the 12th they do the lottery, but then the 12th through the 19th is the combine, and they interview guys at the combine, and there's a lot that needs to be done. So in my guesstimation, we need to have someone in place by the 12th, and so I don't see how that's all going to happen. It can happen, and then if the new president needs to sign a new GM, if they're going to, and they need to be at the combine, and they interview those players and they watch those players, and I think that's a valuable time. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully there's some breaking news. Like, again, I've been waiting. There's not been much news happening, and so I just been putting off this, and it's the longest stretch I've ever had without doing a podcast. And so I had one of my listeners message me and say, "Hey, it's been a long time," and so I'm glad that he did that, and I appreciate that. But before I talk about, we're going to talk. I'm going to break it up. I had a lot of stuff prepared, but I'm not going to do it all in one episode. But I know that the offseason and free agency and trades and different things has been discussed a lot by a lot of different people, and we're going to get into all that. But the first thing I want to talk about is our moves that we made at the trade deadline, and I think they were fabulous moves. And unfortunately, just like everything for the Pistons, we are unlucky. You can say that we did a lot of things wrong, and we did. And certainly we hired the wrong coach. Maybe we made some wrong picks, but I still think that the lottery luck has been bad. Injuries, everybody has injuries, and so we need to have a deep roster because everybody has injuries, and so you need to have a deep enough roster so that you can overcome injuries. So I anyway, we got Fontechhio, and he turned out to be fabulous for us, but he only got to play 16 games. And so, it's exciting. He wants to be in Detroit. I'm hoping that we sign him to a 4-year deal with the fourth year being a team option and give him a good chunk of change. And, he played 16 games only for us. And in those 16 games, he averaged 30 minutes, 48% from all over, and 43% on threes. And that's what we needed. 4 rebounds and 1.8 assists. And we were a different team with him. If you look at the lineups with him in the game, we were good. We were really good, and we were a winning team even when he played, and we won some games when he played. The games that we lost is when the bench unit when Monty played the all bench units, and those were the starters with Cade and Fontechhio and Ivy and Duran and Asar or Stu or whoever. They had they were winning team lineups. We outscored our opponents like every game with those guys on the court. So um, another thing is Quentin Grimes, and so is crushing that we did not get to evaluate him. Just like Monty Morris, that was bad luck. Monty Morris, when you get older players and they're injured, they get injured a lot more. But Monty Morris wasn't that old, and Grimes is 24 years old, and he was really great his second year in the NBA. Last year he struggled, but then with the Pistons, he was horrendous. And so now he's eligible for to sign an extension, but I'm sure he doesn't want to sign an extension, and I'm sure we don't want to sign him to an extension. The only way that would happen is if it was cheap, and I think he would have enough faith in himself and that he wouldn't do that. And I think that the Pistons, until he proves that he's worth it, then we wouldn't sign him for a lot of money to an extension. So, but Grimes, it was pathetic last year, this year with us. He played in only 19 minutes a game. He only played in 6 games, so you really can't say anything. But his knee was injured, obviously, and so he would try to play, and then he was hurt, and he tried to play, and then they finally shut him down. But he shot 21% in those 6 games, 14% on threes, and the year before, his second year in the NBA, again, he's only 24, the 22-23 season, he averaged for the Knicks. We're a playoff team. He was a second-year player on a playoff team starting 30 minutes a game, 47% from the floor, 39% on threes, 11 points a game, over 3 rebounds a game, and over 2 assists a game. And he was a dog on defense. He was a tough defender and well above average for the NBA. And so that you put him and Fontechhio in the lineup every day with the guys that we have, there's hope there if we get a different coach. So we'll see if all that happens. And then obviously we are going to add some players. Obviously we're going to get some more players, but with Kata, Ivy, Asar, Duran, Fontechhio, Stu, Grimes, and Sasser, that's 8 pretty good players. And then you add quality, a couple veterans here or there, and sign a free agent, then we're, I think, going to make improvements. But it's hard to improve in the NBA, and we're going to talk about again some of these other teams how disappointed they are. We're a ways away, and that's just reality. And so, some people want us to make a big move, and I'm going to talk about that in the next episode. But we're going to. I'm not sure what we're ready for, but there's a lot of different possibilities. We have all the possibilities in the world, and hopefully we make the right one. We are going to have to take some chances, and I hope they do spend some money and that we add, at least 2 quality veterans. Hopefully one's at least 6'8" and can shoot and play defense. But real quick, great game today, man. The Mavericks were playing the Clippers. The Clippers got up by 31. And late in the fourth quarter, the Mavericks stormed back and took the lead, and before they lost to the Clippers. So Kyrie was amazing. He's not my favorite player, but he is one of the most incredible players I've ever seen, and he made some impossible shots. Yeah, so it was tied. I think that series is tied now, 2-2. So, and it's going back to LA. But the Suns, talk about a disappointing fan base. When they traded for Durant and they got Beal to go along with Booker, everybody, I'm sure, in Phoenix was just livid. Not livid. They were excited. They were thrilled to death that they were going to be a powerhouse and a contending team for years to come. And they're down 3 games to none. And so how disappointing, everybody's excited. They got Matt Ishbia that played at Michigan State, their new owner. He's willing to spend it whatever it takes and do whatever it takes. And I'm sure the optimism there was overflowing. And now they're going to be out in first round, and they don't have any room to move. They're paying those 3-star players so much money. They're going to be way over the cap, and they just don't have anybody that could trade. They can't even trade Bradley Beal. He has a no trade clause. I guess Durant's the only guy they could trade if they wanted to, and so he's getting older, and so I'm not sure what his value is, but they're stuck. And I see other fan bases when New Jersey, when the Nets, Brooklyn, not New Jersey, when the Nets got Durant and Kyrie and Harden, everybody there was thinking championship, championship, championship. We're going to win at least 2 in the next 3 years or whatever. And that went down the toilet. And so, it's just, it's hard. It's hard and things happen. I mean, you look at the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies had an up and coming great team, and they didn't even make the playoffs because they just had injuries and suspensions and more injuries. So yeah, there's just a lot of disappointment in the NBA, and the Bucks, they're a huge one, and that's again, John Horst might want to leave there because they're down one game. They they won one game and lost two, and to the Pacers, and they're playing again tonight. But not Harden, um, Giannis is probably not playing, and Lillard's probably not playing, almost for sure. They're not; those two guys aren't playing. So what a disappointment. And they don't have any room. They don't have. They got Middleton, and he's older and always injured, and Lopez, he's older, and they just don't have any room to maneuver. And they got those two guys that are making tons of money, and Giannis wanted them to get somebody new, and they did. And it just, there's only so much maneuverability you have when you have guys signed to such big money contracts. And then there's the Pelicans. They had so much talent, and they were an exciting up and coming team, and they're down 0-3. And Ingram's not looking good. A lot of our fans want Ingram, and I'm going to go into this later again. I do not want Brandon Ingram. I would take Brandon Ingram if he had 3 years on his contract. If I'm going to trade um, IB and Duran and our first round pick, and that's what at least it's going to take, at least that, for somebody like him. And he's only going to be here 1 year. And you think he's going to resign with us if we win 35 games? Why would he do that? And he'd be able to get a max anywhere. So I just think that they have all these good players. They have Herb Jones, and they have one of my favorite players, Trey Murphy Jr., Trey Murphy the third, and they just got Zion, who's injured, but they just they're going to be out in the first round. They're going to get swept probably, and so that's what's tough about the NBA. We're all disappointed, and we should be, that we have the worst team, but all these other fan bases are really disappointed. They get all excited, and they think they have hope. And the 76ers, they've had hope for how many years? They're down one game to, they won one game and lost three now to the Knicks. And no matter how great, Embiid had one of the greatest performances ever. I mean, he scored 50 points on 19 shots. He just puts the ball in the basket. I'm not a fan of his. I don't particularly enjoy watching him play, but I admire and marvel at his ability to put the ball in the basket. Just like Luka, those guys that can put the ball in the basket is unreal. And Jalen Brunson, I was wrong, man, when he was like with the Mavericks and he was a free agent, and a lot of Piston fans, oh, we could get him, we could get him. And I thought, well, man, we got Cade and we got Ivy, and we're going to want to get this little 6'1", short, stocky guard. And but he has been the real deal, man. He put on a performance the last two games. So yeah. Then we got the Magic and the Cavs. I thought the Cavs were going to be a real powerhouse. They had Donovan Mitchell, and they have Evan Mobley and Allen. They were loaded, and young guys with all-star potential, and they had four great guys and that were in their prime, and I thought they're going to be a force to reckon with. So they've lost their last two games to the Magic. They got blown out 2 games in Orlando by like 30 and by over 20. So their fan base is going to be disappointed. And now Donovan Mitchell only has like 1 year left on his contract. And so are they going to trade him, or, what do you do? And then again, there's all these teams like the Hawks, and we're going to talk about Trey next episode. A lot of you want Trey, and they can't even make it out of the playoffs, and so up the play-in. And so the Bulls and the Raptors, it's just hard. And then you got the Lakers that have two of the greatest players in the league, and they just barely didn't get swept. They're down one game, and they've lost 3 games to Denver. So what's going to happen with them, and what can they do? And their options are few and far between. But so yeah. Anyway, we're going to talk about free agency next episode, and we're going to talk about trades. And right now, we're going to talk about Blake. Blake Griffin, and a lot of you loved him. So I was blessed to be around and with the bad boys. And even before they won a championship, they fought and battled the Celtics and lost to them in a tough battle, one year, and then the next year they lost to the Lakers in the finals where they got screwed on a phantom foul, and then the next year they won the championship, and the next year they won the championship. So they had a tremendous run, and then the '04 team, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals in '03, but they made it 6 years in a row to the Eastern Conference Finals, and you know how hard that is. You look at all these teams, and I was lucky to see that. So a lot of you, though, didn't get to see either of those teams play. And some of you, Blake Griffin was the best thing you saw, but I was livid. I was so angry when we traded for him because we traded a first-round pick and a rising star, Tobias Harris. I loved Tobias back then. He went on to be an all-star. He got a max contract, and he was in his prime. And Blake was always injured. He had a max contract at that time. And so he played one phenomenal year. He was phenomenal for us. And the rest of his time, he was injured. His last year with us, he never even dunked it once, you know. And everybody said, oh, Blake gave us everything he had. He didn't even go inside the three-point line that last year he played with the Pistons. And he missed lots of games. And then he went on and got signed with the Nets. We paid him to play for the Nets, and he started dunking again. And so anyway, it's not Blake's fault, but was a talented player. He will be a Hall of Famer. But I just think that was a terrible move on our part. And so that's one reason, to get rid of Troy is because he's desperate. He's desperate to keep his job. If he doesn't do some great moves, then he knows he'll be fired. So he's gonna, maybe try to make a Blake Griffin trade. But I will say that Troy did the move for Grimes and Fontechhio, whether they work out or not. Those were brilliant moves, and those are good players that could be with us for a while and fit in with our other players, and they both showed a history of shooting and playing some defense, so that's what we want. But again, I thank you for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Be the reason that somebody feels cared for and heard, and go Pistons.